Hello guys, and welcome back to the Doc Mech Car channel. And today what we're going to do is replace the oil cooler gasket on my BMW 530i LCI 2007. Now this will be the oil cooler gasket as well as the oil filter housing gasket. Now as you can see, it's pulling up a little bit of oil right there. So this is a common fault in the N52 engine. This will apply to the N52, N52K engine as well. Alright guys, so the tools you're going to need, first and foremost, you need a 3/8 ratcheting wrench. This is not necessary, but it might help you. And this is a flex head. Now to do the oil cooler housing gasket, you need an E12. And then to do the oil filter housing gasket, you'll need an E10. A 1/4 inch extension going to a universal joint and a 1/4 inch E10 socket. This will make sure that you can sneak it under the intake manifold. Now this will apply to the N52 engines, but if you have a 3 series or a 1 series, then you just need to take out the air suction duct, which was here. But for me, it's a 5 series E60, so I need to remove this plate first. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to unbolt the oil filter cap, and then we'll get to that. Alright guys, so this is the oil filter cap adapter that you can fit over. You don't want to use those ring wrenches as it might damage it. So this one fits over just nicely. And then what we're going to do is we're going to push this down. What we'll do is we'll get this one to sit in nicely first. Alright, so we're going to push it. There we go. So it's now loose. We're going to let this one drain down, and then we'll get to the next step. Alright guys, so we're going to open the cooler reservoir as well. So what this one does is it releases any pressure, because when you do this job, you are going to lose some coolant and some engine oil as well. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to crack all these 10 bolts. This is a T30, and we're going to unscrew all of these bolts. So I'll start off with this one. So I'm going to crack each one loose, and then so you need to make sure you don't do this bolt and this bolt. You need to do these. So anything which is on this steel piece. Alright guys, so you don't need a power hand tool, but it does make the job easier. You see, that's one screw done. So I have already pulled out all the 10 T30 bolts which go around. Now this is a right-hand drive vehicle. Everything is the same with the exception of this. So the bonnet cable goes around on the right-hand side of the vehicle, which is on this side. This is the front of the car. Now for a left-hand drive vehicle, these cables will be on the other side. So that's the only difference. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this backwards, up and back. And then that will give me more space to work on the car here. Alright guys, so the thing is, when we're doing the oil cooler housing gasket and the oil filter housing gasket, as you can see, there's one oil filter housing gasket bolt right here, and that is next to what you call the Mickey Mouse flange, which is also your coolant flange. Okay, and there you go. So that one does look a bit mangled up, so I might need a new oil filter very soon. Alright guys, so I've got a majority of the engine oil from this area sucked out. So I've got my syringe right here. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing it in and then pulling as much oil as out possible. Now when you're doing this, you want to make sure you don't want to put it near the serpentine belt. So that's why it's on this side. If you get oil on this side of the car, it's not so bad. If you get oil on the belt, you're pretty much stuffed unless you're going to change the serpentine belt. Because of the serpentine belt design, if you get oil on the serpentine belt, it could get consumed through the front end crankshaft pulley, crank seal, and then that could potentially destroy your engine. Alright, so as you can see, I've cleaned around this area right here. We're going to take these 3 screws off the oil cooler housing, Now what I've done is I've just drawn up this little bit. Unless you're replacing the screws, you don't need to worry about this. But I'm going to put the screws back exactly where they came from. So I put left, right, and middle. So I'm going to start unbolting this screw first. So I've got my 3/8 ratchet, my 3-inch extension, and my E12 socket. Okay, and then what you're going to do is unbolt it. Oh, seems so tight. Alright guys, so I've managed to get this one loose. For some reason, the previous person who worked in this car used an impact gun on it. So it was like probably 45 to 50 Newton meters. I mean, my face actually went red when I actually tried to unbolt it, but now I've unbolted it. Now, this front ones only need to be torqued down to 16 Newton meters. Alright guys, so there you go, all the bolts are out, and this is a very easy way to organize yourself. You can even clean off the bolts later before putting it back, spray it down with degreaser. Like so. Oh, there you go. That's a lot of oil coming down. Alright, and what we're going to do is there's some more coolant coming out from here, and we're going to just try to put it like this so that it doesn't leak down on to the base. As you can see, it's been leaking from right here where the gasket has, there you go, you can see it in my hand, it's disintegrated. Okay, and we want to try to get it out all in one piece, and there you go. And then that should allow you to loosen the bolt. Okay, so you see it should be clockwise so that it goes like this, like so. All right, so I'm going to loosen the bolt by hand now. I've loosened the bolt here. Now the bolt won't come all the way out because you can't reverse out the bolt because of the Coolant flange 10mm bolt. Now what I'm going to do first is I'm going to get the screw right here. There's one screw right there. And what you're going to do is you're going to sneak this through. And then I'm going to guide it through with my hand, like so. Now we've got it locked in. We can loosen that bolt. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the torch, and then I'm going to show you how that bolt looks. Alright guys, as you can see, that is where that bolt is, right there. And you need to take out the oil pressure sensor switch as well, which is just held on by a clip, and then you can put them on a side. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to start loosening the bolt. Alright guys, so this is the last of the ones we're going to get. And just get that one undone. Now once we have undone this one, we can start to roll this screw down here out, and then we can pull the oil filter housing out. Alright guys, and now what we're going to do is the gasket is on the back right here, and we're going to try to prise the gasket out. So you want to get it, try to get it from a corner, pretty much where it has failed, and you want to stand back so you don't get any engine oil splash in your eyes. Okay, it's slowly coming out. Alright, so that's out in one piece. And you can see it had actually failed here and here. This whole area is mangled. as you can see. Take a look at that. Alright guys, so this is the oil filter housing gasket. It's an L-ring branded gasket. So this, I believe, is supposed to be the same part which comes out of your car, and they are one of the OE manufacturers for BMW. Okay, so I've cleaned down the channel right here, and also on the other side I've cleaned down the channel. Alright, and I've cleaned the channel down on this side as well, as much as I could. And there's some remnants, but I've used a degreaser and gone with a cotton bud, as well as a toothbrush for this part of the mating surface. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to fit the new gasket in. Okay guys, so this is what I've done for the oil filter housing gasket bolts as well. So bottom is the one for here, easy is the one which is here, and manifold many is the one which goes under here. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to fit the new oil filter housing gasket. Make sure your hands are nice and clean. And as you can see, this one is quite pliable, which is good. Alright. So you want to make sure that it fits into the channels perfectly well. Okay. And then just press it down. Okay, and you want to make sure that every little channel sits down nicely. Okay, and it only goes in one way. Alright guys, now that I have my gasket sitting down nicely, I'm going to align it down straight. And then I'm going to put the first bolt in. And align that bolt down. Okay, we want to make sure that that one sits nicely. So as you can see, I'm just threading the screw back in now, just so that it doesn't back out. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten this bolt down a bit more. And then I'm going to finger tighten this bolt some more. You want the bolts all to line up nicely. And then I'm going to tighten this one down a bit more. Now you want to apply even force at each end. I have evenly distributed the torque. I've done a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. Tighten it down little bit by little bit until you actually distribute even torque so that the gasket can be smushed down nicely. Now I've got my torque wrench over here, and I'm going to tighten down the screw at the back to 22 Newton meters. Okay, so I'm going to tighten this one down to 22 Newton meters. That's done. It's 22 Newton meters. I heard the click. So that's nice and secure. And then, now if you had taken out the Mickey Mouse flange, then you can actually torque this down to 22 Newton meters as well. So for the oil filter housing, you need 22 Newton meters across all the screws. So for the oil cooler gasket, I'm also using the L-ring branded gasket. So that's the part number right there. And I'll also link it down in the description. So we're going to take that one out. I've cleaned down the channel now as nice as I possibly can. And I cleaned it here as well. I used the toothbrush just to give it a clean down. Don't worry, I'm not going to use it again. So give it a good clean down right here. As you can see, it's only a little bit of remnants left, but you can't do much about that. And the channel has been nicely cleaned by a cotton bud. All right, and then we're going to fit it in nicely. So I would recommend starting off down this corner first. and then making your way up the corner. In that way, you actually get it sitting nicely into the groove. Yep, and then what you want to do is you just want to press it down. Now, it is normal for this one to be embossed because the screws will actually scratch the gasket so that it seals nicely. So I'm going to start with the top ones first. Just do a final check that nothing has come out or come undone, and that's looking good. And what you want to do is you want to thread the screw in first, and make sure you thread it in straight. Okay, and then we're going to thread the rest of the screws, including the bottom one, and then we're going to tighten them down. I've got my E12 right here, and we're going to evenly distribute the torque. And then tighten this one again. So why we're doing one by one is so that the gasket can seat in properly and seal. Now, if you are doing it one side, then you might probably get leaks on the other side. I have got my 1/4 inch torque wrench, 1/4 inch to 3/8 adapter, to a 3/8 extension, to a 3/8 E10 socket. Okay, now what we're going to do is I have it set to 16 Newton meters. Yep, 16 Newton meters. So now I'm going to screw the oil filter back in and torque this one down to 25 Newton meters. That's done. It's 25 Newton meters. Alright guys, and before we turn the engine on, we do need to bleed the coolant and add some coolant and then bleed it. And we do need to fill up a bit of engine oil as well. Like so. Okay, so the screws need to line up. Okay, and then you need to push this one under here. You're going to be fairly careful with this. Fill up the coolant reservoir tank. The one I've got here is not genuine BMW coolant, but it's Penrite OEM coolant, and this one is suitable for BMW. It's GS 94000 approved. We'll pour it in. Okay, we'll just put the sun over here. Okay, that's enough. My expansion stick is actually broken, but that should be fine. And the coolant bleeding procedure is going to start. But what we need to do is we need to put a battery charger on this one first. Alright guys, so now I would also recommend that you top up your engine oil. You can actually check the engine oil level through the interior dipstick of the car. So it doesn't have a physical dipstick. You can actually program it to check the engine oil level through your iDrive or either through your instrument cluster. Now I have my charger right here. Now it's a 6 amp charger. It will work. I've selected AGM flooded battery and bulk, so now it's charging the battery. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the coolant bleeding procedure. Now we are on the inside of the car. I've got my key, which I'm going to put in. Alright, and then you want to hit the start button, but do not put your foot on the brake. And then what you want to do is you want to turn the air conditioning to speed 1, heater all the way up. Okay, and then put your foot down and floor it while the engine is turned off for about 10 to 12 seconds. Okay, and then we should hopefully hear the water pump engage, and there should be some gushing sounds coming from the reservoir, the expansion tank, coolant expansion tank in the front. There you go. You can see the water pump is now bleeding the air out of the system and it's engaged its bleeding procedure. You can see the water gushing through. Alright guys, now it's been 15 minutes later and the coolant bleeding procedure has now been completed. As you can see, it's gone down a little bit more. You might need to top it up after this. Alright guys, and that is the coolant now topped off. Alright guys, and that concludes this video. Now I have got the expansion tank cap back on. I filled up a bit of engine oil and that's pretty much done. So now I'm going to start the vehicle. Now you might have a cover, a plastic cover which goes over here, so you need to put that back. And also you need to make sure that the oil pressure sensor switch has been placed back, as well as if you're taking out this connection, you also need to plug that back. Alright guys, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and give this video a thumbs up. Cheers. Alright guys, as you can see, it's now at the maximum level.